Hey scholars, today is Wednesday, May 13th, 2020. In math, we've been taking a look at two-step word problems and telling time. Let's take a look at a problem today. In today's problem, we see that Amanda ran 4 laps at recess and 5 laps at lunch. Then she had to run more laps at PE. Altogether, she ran 15 laps. How many laps did she run in PE? Okay, scholars, let's take a look at the information that we need to use here. So we see that Amanda ran 4 laps at recess, and then she ran 5 laps at lunch. So we already have some information there. All right, then she had to run more laps. Well, we don't know how many, but we know she had more at PE. And then we see that all together, she ran 15 laps. Okay, let's break it down here. So scholars, excuse me, here's our job. How many laps did she run in PE? Okay, scholars, so we'll take our 4, and we better use that number. We see that she had 4 and then she ran 5, so she ran both of those. So we're going to use them both. Now that's our first step. We already have a problem that we have to solve. But then it says she had to run more laps at PE. How many? We don't know. That's our job. Now we know what we have to figure out. How many laps was it that she ran at PE? Because all together, remember that tells us we have a sum. She ran 15 laps. So we're thinking 4 plus 5 plus something. The amount of laps she ran at PE equals 15. Let's go ahead and solve this equation. So step 1, we're going to solve 4 plus 5. Well, that's a quick math fact. So we know 4 plus 5, 4 and 5 more. 5 more is 9. So done, solved. So now step 2, we can take the 9 that we already solved. And then we're going to figure out what do we have to add to 9 to equal 15. Well, scholars, we've been doing a lot of place value charts, but let's just think, what do we add to 9 to get to 15? I'm just going to use a quick mental strategy here. So I have 9 and I want to get to 15. So I'm going to count up 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 6. So 6 helped me get to 15. That means that Amanda ran 6 laps during PE. So mental strategies help us out too, and our place value chart always proves our work, so that's why we do that. But scholars, with numbers like these, this is where it's so important that we know our math facts, where right away we can say 9 plus 6, that's 15. 4 plus 5, I know that's 9. So we're practicing our math facts as we do these as well. Now, scholars, we're also going to take some time today to be filling out clocks. That means we're thinking back again about our hour hand and our minute hand in time. We know our hour hand is that short hand that tells us the hour, and our minute hand is that longer hand, and it tells us the minutes in each hour. Let's take a look at these clocks. We have a couple of blank clocks with us here, and we're going to show the time 4 o'clock and 6:50. So scholars, when we're thinking about telling time, remember we're going to have a short hand that tells us the hour and a long hand that tells us the minute. Remember there are 12 hours in AM and 12 hours in PM, like we've been practicing the last couple of days. So these times don't tell us whether or not it's AM or PM, but they're going to look the same on the clock no matter which one it is, because we only have 12 hours on the clock. Now, scholars, remember that our clock moves around to the right and around the direction of the numbers. That's why we call that clockwise. Let's take a look at our 4 o'clock. I'm going to start with my red marker. And remember, we're going to be thinking about this hour 4. So whenever we have 4 o'clock, we have 00 in the time, that's called o'clock is how we say it, 4 o'clock. So we say the hour and then we say o'clock after. So when we have this starting place of the beginning of the new hour, we know that our hour hand is going to be a shorthand that points directly at the hour. So it's not going to be between any hours. It's going to go right to the 4. And when I have a 0, 0 for my minutes, my blue is what I've been using for my minutes, it's going to point right at the 12. So when you're looking for a clock that tells you it's a brand new hour, 4 o'clock, remember the hour hand will point just to the number of the new hour, and the minute hand will point right to the 12. But let's try something that's showing us another time. We have here 6:50. Well, whenever we're thinking about the hour hand and where it points when we're in between an hour, we think about the two numbers that it goes between. Remember the start of the hour at 0 is we're pointing right at the number of the hour. So in this case, that would be 6 o'clock would point right at the 6, but this is not 6 o'clock, it's 6:50. So our hour hand isn't going to point right at the 6, it's going to be pointing in between the 6 and the 7. Now, scholars, when we're thinking about the minutes, 50 minutes is almost a whole nother hour. So our hour hand isn't going to point closer to the 6, it's actually going to point closer to the 7. It's going to point almost all the way at the 7 because we've almost made it to a new hour. But it's still showing us the hour of 6 o'clock. It's just almost 7 o'clock. Let's see why. Because in our minutes, when we start at 0 here at the 12, we're counting by 5s as we go around to 50. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. So 50 minutes is almost a whole nother hour. So do you see why the hour hand is pointing a little bit closer to the 7 than the 6? Because we've almost made it around the clock a whole nother hour. And here we'll see that our minute hand will point to this 10 for 50 minutes. And remember, our minute hands go all the way to the end. They actually cover up that big number on the clock. So we have 6:50 here, where our hour hand is in between the 6 and the 7, but our minute hand has gone all the way around the clock and is now back at that 10. 6:50. Even though this hour hand looks like it's pointing at the 7, it hasn't passed 7 yet. So this is 6:50. All right, scholars, as you're looking at telling time and putting hour and minute hands on your own clock today, let's think about where the hour hands go. Sometimes it's going to go right at the hour that it says, and sometimes it's going to go in between two numbers. Our minute hands, we're counting by 5s. So we're remembering that the minute hand is the long hand and the hour hand is the short hand. All right, scholars, have an awesome day of learning.